Hey everybody, it's Riker Rider, and I'm going to be beginning not just a new series, but a new trilogy. Since I've already done speedruns of the main SNES Donkey Kong Country series, that leaves very little room for Donkey Kong Country series Let's Plays. While this isn't exactly part of the DKC trilogy, it's definitely... what's the word I'm looking for? It definitely follows in their footsteps. Now, one thing that this game really prided itself upon was its graphics engine. And this game has very advanced graphics for a Game Boy game, but it doesn't really have... The Game Boy never really had the capacity for such advanced graphics, and they look really blocky. The sprites are way too big for the screen. And the game has a number of other flaws that really... What is it? What's the word I'm looking for? They really don't make this game nearly as high quality as, say, the original series that it's based on. And the reason why this really has to do with some history about the console wars going on at the time. Like the Super Nintendo versus like the Genesis, other systems that were on the market at the time. Now Nintendo did have a lion's share of the market with the Super Nintendo, but other companies were giving them a run for their money, especially during the later half of the this generation, and into the fifth generation of video game consoles. The reason why is because Donkey Kong Country was released in, what was it? It was released in, what? November of 1994, I believe. So... it was definitely towards the end of the life of the Super Nintendo, and that's really what caused Nintendo to almost lose the console war, is because they actually fell behind towards the end of the Super Nintendo era. And it really shines some background on why this game exists when you take into account really why Donkey Kong Country itself was created. Oh, that's a bonus level. I want to get into that. So I might ramble for a bit, but I definitely have reason to. Back in 1994, the Super NES was starting to get outclassed by 32-bit hardware, such as SNK's Neo Geo, some of the adapters for the Sega Genesis, and even Sony's PlayStation was coming out soon. So they had three companies that were producing 32-bit hardware. And because the SNES was only a 16-bit system, they had some pretty stiff competition for more powerful systems. Now, one thing I never realized before doing this Let's Play is I thought that Donkey Kong Country was the first SNES game to take advantage of sampling instead of using predefined sounds within the SNES itself to take advantage of. Oh, this jump's annoying. Of course. I thought it was Donkey Kong Country, but the first big seller that took advantage of the, what is it? The SNES's capability to use sampling instead of predefined sounds like the NES and a lot of its predecessors did was, believe it or not, Super Metroid, and Super Metroid predates Donkey Kong Country by about 6 months. But And one thing that really propelled the Super Nintendo to early fame in the console wars was its ability to do pseudo 3D in the form of Mode 7, which I'm pretty sure you guys remember from the Super Star Wars saga. Like, the Super Star Wars games all took full advantage of Mode 7, despite how early they were in the production of, well, not production run, but the life, rather, of the SNES. Well, oh, come on. Yeah, this game has a lot of problems with collision detection, and it really shows that this was more of a cop-out by Rare. Now, don't get me wrong, the game's not bad, it just has a lot of issues that the SNES title didn't. Where they made it look pretty more than they did actually make the game play well. And that's really one of the issues I have with not only this game, but the trilogy in general. Now, as I was saying about the console wars, one of the issues that the SNES ran into in their later days was what is it? Sorry, I had to check my notes to remember where the bonus stage was. It's down here. In this bonus stage, all those Kong tokens that you've been collecting, you can turn them into extra lives. Or try to. Now, where was I on my discussion of the console wars? One of the limitations of the SNES was it could not do true 3D. All of the 32-bit systems could do true 3D, and the PlayStation was the best at it. So, technologically, the SNES was really starting to fall behind on technology, and as such was losing a lot of market share, despite that the games were incredible. Now what really propelled Nintendo back into the market and established Rare as a legendary developer in the SNES generation of video games, and the N64 generation as well, which was the 5th generation. One of the things that really established them was the production of a platforming game meant to show off some new technology that Nintendo had developed for the SNES. Because when it was released, well, not when it was released, but a couple months before it was released, if you were subscribed to Nintendo Power, Nintendo put in a bonus VHS tape that had, what was it? It had a whole bunch of pre-release footage of Donkey Kong Country, and it really just showed how mind-blowing the graphics were. I never really got to show off the graphics a lot because I was speedrunning the game, but back in 1994, pre-rendered 3D had never been done on the Super Nintendo before. They had like Mode 7 pseudo 3D, which was pretty much just graphics resizing, graphical rotations, and a handful of other things. But the game had never done, or the system rather, had never done true 3D. Whether it be in the graphics engine or an actual 3D gaming engine. Now, the 3D gaming engine wouldn't come until 1996 with the Nintendo 64, but Donkey Kong Country was still a graphical marvel back in its day. Because it was the first video game, to my knowledge, that used pre-rendered 3D, like just pre-rendered 3D in general, Oh, stupid. I think it's... yeah. And they talk a lot about this in the pre-release video for Donkey Kong Country. I'm going to link that in the video description. And some of you viewers may have already seen it if you've gone digging through my favorites, because I have it in there too. I still actually have the VHS tape, but I don't have a VHS player anymore. And Nintendo did a really good job on the preparation of all of those, on like all the games that they did pre-release videos for. Like I know they did one for Banjo-Kazooie, they did one for Star Fox 64, they did one for the Nintendo 64 itself, and they did, and supposedly they did one for Pokemon, but I don't remember that one. One of my subscribers pointed out that they did one for Pokemon, but I don't remember it. Now, what made the graphics for Donkey Kong Country so mind-blowing was technology that had only previously been used in movies, called, I believe, ACM. What ACM let developers do was create pre-rendered 3D graphics, like for their sprites. You may notice that all their sprites are in 3D. So what they did was they used the technology to create a model, and then just stored the model moving around as frames for an animation, which really made the model 3D. The Donkey Kong Country was also the first game to my knowledge to make use of multiple parallax scrolling, and it had a number of other technological marvels. And one of the high points of the game's advertising campaign was that it was 16-bit, despite having all this technology. And then there was the game itself. The game itself was just incredibly high quality. And it really made everybody look forward to Rare's next developments. And a lot of them on Nintendo 64 were platformers or first-person shooters. That is, until Microsoft bought out Rare. Then Rare started having problems, and we not need to talk about them anymore. Unfortunately. I really miss the good old days of Rare. It didn't matter what genre of video game they developed, their developments were just absolutely fantastic. And this series, the Donkey Kong Land series, was one of their worst series in their golden age of development, when they had their dream team, per se. And that's saying something.